Hi, Nico and Jean here today. We're going to talk about a topic that I find is probably one of the most important things when you're learning how to truly move past just surviving narcissistic abuse and healing trauma, and really moving into tapping into your potential for peace, purpose, and prosperity. So before we jump into the topic, I just want to say thanks for joining me. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please feel free to do so. My dog is scratching herself in the background here. That's what you're hearing. Hit the buttons, hit the bell, hit the buttons, hit the like or whatever. If you feel like you get a lot out of this channel, you can also jump over to my Patreon account and you can subscribe there if you feel like you want to help support my channel and all the work that goes into it. So let's talk about the topic of the idea of that healing from narcissistic trauma is like a spiritual unfoldment. It's like a springboard to enlightenment. And I feel like this is personally, for me, absolutely true. And I know that many of you, this will resonate with you. And I want to just kind of throw out this topic of, once you get past, which I'm not saying this isn't a valid stage, but once you get past the stage of doing all this research and finding out what narcissism is and learning about the traits of narcissists and the different kinds of narcissism and the ways in which narcissists can behave, and you learn about the dynamic, and you're starting to really understand and accept that that's what you're dealing with. I feel like there's this other stage that comes after you really get a handle on that, where when you're starting to understand like the dynamic that it creates between you and this person, and or an entity, even it's not just a person, it can be an organization, it could be work, it could be your workplace, your corporation you work for, and you're understanding that this process is basically showing you how you're not really speaking and expressing your truth because of the pattern you're in with narcissism. The narcissistic dynamic, remember, is all about creating a false self and then upholding that false self through its interactions with others. So if you're in a narcissistic dynamic and you're not the narcissist, if you're on the other side, if you're the codependent, well, just to use a term, then that means that you're suppressing your truth. You're doing everything you can to probably regulate that person or that entity. You are being careful about what you say. You're making sure not to upset them. You don't want to do anything to set them off. You're suppressing your being. We've talked about this before. You're suppressing your being in order to be around this person safely. And that's the illusion, is like there's no safe way to be in a narcissistic dynamic. There's no way to be in a relationship with someone who is narcissistic and be able to truly fully show up as yourself and speak your truth and express your truth and stand in your truth. And this is not good for the being, spiritually speaking. For your being, if you want to really develop your personal spiritual path, already that truth is so important. To be able to connect to your truth and to be able to truly express it is one of the most important things for you. But being in a narcissistic dynamic is going to cause you to suppress it, to ignore it, to not fully express it for fear of whatever that might be: criticism, rejection, punishment, abandonment. So what I'm trying to say to you is the lesson here for all of us spiritually is to think of narcissism as like kind of an entity of an ego. And ego, not someone's ego, I'm not saying like someone's ego, but the idea of ego, which is the idea that we're separate, and it's the illusion of separateness. And if the way to heal from this is to go to your own source, whatever that is for you, you can call it God, you can call it Buddha, you can call it universe, you can call it life, you can call it anything you want. It's source to you, whatever you name it. You can connect to that source, which is your truth. And then you don't need to be in a relationship with someone who is toxic. You don't have any reason to stay connected to them anymore. And when you interact with them, you're not trying to get your needs met anymore. So it completely loses its power. And the illusion is broken. And you can call that like breaking the trauma bond. So I don't want to go too much deeper into this, but I just want to introduce this topic because I feel like I'm going to talk a lot more about this in the future. I feel like it's really important to discuss like the spiritual unfoldment that happens during healing narcissistic trauma, and that it can actually be really joyful. It's not, yes, things can be painful, but when we can transform, we can transform the trauma into like knowledge and knowing, and we can learn about ourselves. And it's almost like when we're like get really empowered to speak our truth, it's so much more empowering when we weren't doing it before and now we're doing it. It's like you realize how beautiful it is and how it's your birthright to do this. So it's almost like a rebirth of your own. At least that's how I perceive it. I hope this was helpful to you today. And again, if you like my channel and you haven't subscribed, hit the buttons, reach out to me, and I will see you next time. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.